Captain Lee's fingers traced the edge of the holographic display, watching the swirling data streams update with each passing second. Around her, the bridge of the Seoul-Yang hummed with quiet efficiency. Unlike the massive alien command centers, filled with dozens of officers, her ship operated with just 5 crew members. "Status report," she said, not taking her eyes off the display. "All 7 vessels holding position," Lieutenant Huan reported from his station. "The aliens still don't know we're monitoring their communications." Lee nodded. Through the reinforced viewport, she could see the other 6 ships of their small fleet. The Beko, Maru, Mugunghwa, Taeguk, Narae, and Chongryong drifted in perfect formation, their dark hulls barely reflecting the light from the nearby star. Each ship was compact, sleek, and deceptively simple in appearance. 50,000 kilometers away, the massive Galactic Trade Council station loomed like a metallic mountain in space. Its crystalline towers and rotating sections housed thousands of beings from across the galaxy. The station itself was larger than most human cities, bristling with weapons, shields, and sensors that could detect a grain of sand from light years. "Away, sir, they're talking about us again," Lieutenant Park announced from the communications station, adjusting her headset. "Should I put it on speakers?" "Do it," Lee said. Suddenly the bridge filled with the sound of alien voices, filtered through the universal translators. Admiral Vex's deep rumbling laugh echoed through the ship. "7 ships," the Zephyrian admiral boomed. "7 tiny ships think they can survey our territory. My personal yacht is bigger than their entire fleet combined." Other voices joined in. A high-pitched chittering from the insectoid klaxon representative. A bubbling sound that might have been laughter from the aquatic depth swimmers. Even the normally dignified crystalline hegemony ambassador was making sounds that their translator interpreted as amused clicking. On board the Baeko, Commander Yun felt her jaw tighten as she listened to the alien mockery. The ship's pilot, Lieutenant Kang, noticed her reaction and leaned over from his control seat. "Easy there, Commander," he whispered. "Remember what they say back on Earth. Let sleeping dogs lie." Yun managed a small smile. "More like, let them think we're sleeping. Puppies." The alien voices continued their discussion, completely unaware that every word was being recorded and analyzed by the human ships. "Look at their energy signatures," scoffed a voice identified as Consul Thrick of the metallic swarm. "Their power output is pathetic. My personal defense drones have stronger engines." "Perhaps they're refugees," suggested another voice, this one belonging to a wind caller. "Their technology seems centuries behind ours. Should we offer assistance?" "Assistance?" Admiral Vex laughed again. "They probably don't even have proper weapons. Their ships look like they were built in someone's backyard." Aboard the Maru, Captain Rowe exchanged looks with his crew. They'd spent months preparing for this moment, studying alien technology, learning their languages, understanding their weaknesses. Now, listening to the casual dismissal of human capabilities, they couldn't help but feel a mix of amusement and anticipation. "Sir," called out Ensign Cho, the ship's youngest crew member, "should we show them what these backyard ships can do?" "Patience," Rowe replied. "Everything has its time." The alien station's massive sensor arrays swept across the human fleet again. The readings were exactly what the humans wanted them to see: small ships with minimal energy output, basic materials, and seemingly primitive technology. The reality was far different. Deep within each human vessel, beyond the detection of even the most advanced alien sensors, lay technology that would have terrified the council members if they truly understood it. Quantum processors capable of calculations that dwarfed entire alien computer networks. Power systems that used controlled micro-black holes for energy generation. Weapons that could reshape matter at the molecular level. But for now, all of this remained hidden. The humans had learned patience during their centuries of preparation. "They're still debating whether to send a patrol," reported Lieutenant Kim from the Mugunghwa. "The Thraxians want to escort us to safety. The Vorthak think we should be quarantined. The Zephyrians just want us gone." Captain Lee nodded. It was all going according to plan. "How long until the next phase?" 72 hours, answered Lieutenant Huan. That gave them 3 more days of being underestimated, 3 more days of gathering intelligence on alien fleet movements, weapon capabilities, and defensive strategies. 3 more days before the galaxy learned that humanity had grown up. On the alien station, the meeting continued. Maps showed the 7 tiny ships as minor blips, barely worth noting. Strategic discussions focused on more important matters: trade routes, territorial disputes, and the ongoing expansion of member species into unclaimed systems. "We'll send the Thraxians to deal with them," Admiral Vex finally decided. "Her single patrol squadron should be enough. If these humans are truly lost, we'll guide them home. If they're up to something, well..." His laugh was cold this time. 7 little ships won't cause us any trouble." The assembled aliens agreed, already moving on to other business. None of them noticed the slight fluctuation in their station's sensors as the human ships received the transmission. None of them saw the satisfied smiles on human faces as the first phase of their plan reached completion. In 72 hours, the laughter would stop. The quantum alarm chimed softly, pulling Captain Rowe from his morning coffee. Through the viewport of the Maru, 3 massive shapes emerged from hyperspace, their hulls gleaming like polished obsidian against the stars. Each Thraxian battleship stretched nearly 2 kilometers long, bristling with weapon arrays and armored, plating thick enough to withstand planetary bombardments. "Sir, we've got company," Ensign Cho reported from the sensor station. "Thraxian patrol squadron, just as command predicted." Lieutenant Kim adjusted her communication array, fingers dancing, across holographic controls. "They're hailing us on all frequencies. Looks like they want to talk." Captain Rowe set down his cup and straightened his uniform. After centuries of preparation, this was humanity's real first contact with the galactic community. "Put them through." The main screen flickered to life, revealing the Thraxian commander. The alien looked like a cross between a rhino and a tank. Massive shoulders covered in natural armor plating, 4 arms that ended in clawed hands, and eyes that glowed with an inner fire. Battle scars crisscrossed his grey hide, telling stories of countless conflicts. "Unknown vessels," the Thraxian commander growled, his voice like grinding stone. "You are in restricted space. State your intentions." Kim nodded to Captain Rowe, who stepped forward. "Greetings, Commander. This is Captain Rowe of the Earth vessel Maru. We are conducting peaceful surveys within international space, as outlined in Galactic Charter Section 4.7. The Thraxian's laugh was like boulders tumbling down a mountain. Other crew members appeared behind him, more of the reptilian warriors, their ornate uniforms marking them as seasoned veterans. "Earth? Earth," the commander repeated, slapping his knee. "Isn't that the little blue planet in the backwater?" "Milky Way spiral. You brave little things came all this way in those tiny ships." His officers joined in the laughter. One of them, a younger Thraxian with fresh scars, leaned forward. "Commander Vrak, look at their power readings. My personal combat armor has a stronger energy signature." Captain Rowe maintained his polite expression while privately noting every detail of the alien ships. Hidden sensors scattered throughout. The human fleet were gathering unprecedented data: shield frequencies, weapon charging patterns, engine specifications. Information that might prove vital in the days to come. "How adorable," Commander Vrak continued. "Listen, little humans. This area is dangerous. We've had reports of quantum storms, dark matter eddies, and unregistered alien fleets. We'll escort you to safety before something big and scary finds you out here." From the Baiko, Commander Yun watched the exchange with growing amusement. "Are you getting this?" she whispered to her tactical officer, Lieutenant Zhang. "Every word," Zhang replied. "Also recording their ship layouts. Look at those blind spots in their sensor arrays." Meanwhile, the Thraxian ships began moving into a protective formation around the human fleet. Their engine trails glowed like miniature stars as they repositioned themselves. The lead ship, Commander Vrak's flagship, Bone Crusher, could have easily fit 3 human vessels inside its main hangar bay. "Thank you for the offer, Commander," Captain Rowe said carefully, "but we must decline. We have work to complete in this system." The laughter stopped. Commander Vrak's eyes narrowed, and his 4 arms crossed in a gesture that clearly meant business. "Work? What kind of work could your tiny ships possibly have here?" Scientific research, Rowe replied. Stellar cartography, radiation measurements, mineral surveys, standard exploration protocols. Impossible, interrupted the young Thraxian officer. Our sensors would have detected any mineral deposits worth surveying. This system is empty except for astronomical debris. The human captain smiled slightly. Perhaps your sensors aren't calibrated for the specific materials we're seeking. This comment caused some shuffling among the Thraxian crew. Their pride in their advanced technology was legendary throughout the galaxy. To suggest that their sensors might miss something was almost insulting. Commander Vrak leaned forward, his claws extended. Little human, you've come very far to play games. Our patrol squadron could vaporize your entire fleet without charging our main guns. Don't test our patience. Behind him, the Thraxian ships began powering up their weapons systems. Energy readings spiked across the human sensors as massive plasma cannons rotated to track the small Earth vessels. Point defense lasers came online, and torpedo tubes opened like the mouths of hungry beasts. Sir, Ensign Cho whispered, they're targeting us. Captain Rowe raised his hand calmly. No sudden movements. Lieutenant Kim, are we recording everything? Yes, sir. Every ship movement, every weapon signature, every energy pattern. The tension in space grew thick. On the Thraxian flagship, junior officers awaited orders to fire. The humans were clearly outgunned thousands to one. Logic dictated they should surrender immediately, accept escort to the nearest galactic outpost, and beg for mercy. But something was wrong. The Thraxians, experienced in countless battles, began to notice something odd about the human ships. Despite facing overwhelming firepower, the small vessels maintained perfect formation. No emergency signals, no frantic communications between ships, no signs of panic whatsoever. Commander, the young officer said uncertainly. They're not afraid, Commander. Vrak studied the human vessels more carefully. In his long military career, he'd seen many species react to Thraxian warships. Fear was always the first response. Ships would scatter, shields would flicker to life, weapons would power up in desperate preparation. But these 7 small ships did nothing. They simply waited. Their heart rates, another Thraxian officer reported, scanning the human ships with biological sensors. Normal. Completely normal. It's like they're discussing the weather. On the Maru, Captain Rowe turned to his crew. Remember, everyone, first impressions matter. Show them what humans are really like. Sir, Lieutenant Kim asked, should I open all channels so the other ships can hear? Yes. Let's give our friends a proper introduction to humanity. As the communication channel opened fleet-wide, each human captain smiled. They'd trained for this moment for decades. Now it was time to show the galaxy what Earth's children had become. The Thraxians waited, weapons charged, engines ready. But for the first time in their proud military history, they faced an enemy that refused to be intimidated. The standoff had begun. Lieutenant Park pressed her hands against the console of the Mugunghwa, watching the Thraxian ships form a perfect encirclement. They're quite insistent, she observed, her tone carrying just a hint of amusement. Commander Vrak seems determined to play the protective galactic big brother. Captain Ann studied the tactical display. The Thraxian formation was textbook military doctrine. Every escape route blocked, overlapping fields of fire, optimal positioning for a coordinated strike. It would have been impressive if it weren't so predictable. They've completed the cage, reported Ensign Seo from the navigation station. We're surrounded, ma'am. Perfect, Captain Ann smiled. Lieutenant Jam, open all channels, public broadcast. This concerns everyone who might be listening. On the Thraxian flagship, Commander Vrak's sensor officer suddenly looked up from his console. Sir, they're broadcasting on all frequencies. Emergency bands, military channels, even civilian frequencies. The whole sector will hear this. Vrak nodded. Let them cry for help. No one will reach them in time anyway. Captain Ann's voice rang clearly through space, transmitted by quantum relay stations across multiple star systems. All vessels in this system, you are violating Earth's sovereign territory. Under Article 12 of the Galactic Convention on Territorial Waters, I hereby issue you a formal warning. This is your final warning. The laughter that erupted from the Thraxian ships was immediate and harsh. Commander Vrak could barely speak through his amusement. Your final warning. You have 7 tiny ships against 12 Thraxian battleships. Each of our vessels carries enough firepower to glass a moon. Behind him, his officers were wiping tears from their eyes. Sovereign territory, one wheezed. The nearest human colony is 30 light years away. Perhaps we should tell them about the energy weapons, suggested another. Maybe they don't know what a plasma lance can do to their little hull plating. The laughter grew louder as the joke spread through the Thraxian fleet. Some junior officers started making bets about how long it would take to disable the human ships once they fired. But on the bridge of the Xiaoyang, Captain Li wasn't laughing. She stood before her command chair, hands clasped behind her back, watching the enemy formation with calculating eyes. Signal from Captain An, Lieutenant Huan reported. She's asking if we should proceed to Phase 2. Any response to our warning? Li asked. Just more laughter, ma'am. Captain Li nodded slowly. Then they've made their choice. All ships, prepare. For synchronized demonstration, remember no casualties, we're making a point, not starting a war. The Xiaoyang began to change. Deep within its hull, systems that had remained dormant for the entire journey suddenly came online. Quantum field generators hummed to life. Space-time displacement matrices activated. The ship's compact form began to shimmer with an otherworldly energy. On the Thraxian flagship, alarms started screaming. "Sir," the sensor officer shouted, "I'm losing the lead human ship. Energy readings are impossible." Commander Vrak spun toward his screens just as the Xiaoyang vanished. Not cloaked, not hidden, simply gone. For a moment, space where the ship had been showed only empty void and distant stars. The Thraxian sensors couldn't find even a trace of its existence. Then reality folded. Behind the Thraxian flagship, space twisted like heated glass. The Xiaoyang emerged from nowhere, appearing instantly within point-blank range of the massive alien vessel. The small human ship looked like a tiger shark beside a whale, but size was about to prove irrelevant. "Impossible," Commander Vrak roared. "Nothing can move that fast. Physics doesn't—" A brief pulse of energy erupted from the human vessel. It wasn't visible light, more like a ripple in space itself, a distortion that seemed to bend the very fabric of reality. The pulse lasted less than a second. The effects were immediate and devastating. The bone crushers. Lights went out. Every screen went black. Engines died mid-burn. Weapons powered down. Shields collapsed. The mighty Thraxian flagship became nothing more than a floating metal shell, drifting through space like a dead whale. But that wasn't all. The pulse had somehow jumped between ships. The War Talon, positioned to the Bone Crusher's port side, suffered the same fate. Its massive hull went dark as every system failed simultaneously. Then the Blood Spear, nearly a kilometer away, also died. 3 of the galaxy's most advanced warships, each capable of conquering planets, had been disabled by a vessel smaller than their shuttle bays. The silence that followed was deafening sauce. Aboard the still-functioning Thraxian ships, crews stared at their screens in shock. Emergency protocols activated automatically, but no one moved to carry them out. They just watched, waiting for the impossible to make sense. Captain Li's voice broke the silence, calm and measured. "As I said, final warning. We have no desire for conflict." The surviving Thraxian ships began backing away immediately. Engines that moments ago had been positioned for attack now burned at full power in retreat. Not one captain waited for orders. Survival instinct overrode military discipline. "How?" whispered a Thraxian communications officer into an open channel. "How is this possible?" "Magic," someone joked shakily, but no one laughed. Commander Vrak floated in the zero gravity of his dead flagship, emergency lights casting eerie shadows across his scarred face. His ship's emergency batteries would keep life support running for hours, but everything else was gone. Weapons, engines, sensors, all dead. "Sir," his communications officer called out, using a backup radio. "What are your orders?" Vrak stared through the porthole at the small human ship, responsible for their humiliation. It hung motionless in space, no different in appearance than before. Nothing about it suggested the terrible power it had just demonstrated. "Send a message," he said finally. "All frequencies. Tell everyone what happened here." Within hours, the message had spread across the galaxy. Quantum communicators carried the news from system to system, faster than any physical ship could travel. The story grew in the telling. 7 small human ships, a disabled Thraxian squadron, and weapons that seemed to ignore the laws of physics. On trade station Nexus 7, alien merchants gathered around holographic displays, watching the sensor. Recordings in disbelief. In the crystal halls of the Galactic Council, representatives whispered urgently among themselves. Even the mysterious Overmind Collective took notice, their robotic drones transmitting data back to distant cybernetic overlords. Earth, that backwater planet in an insignificant spiral arm, had just announced its arrival on the galactic stage, and they'd done it in a way no one would forget. As the human fleet resumed its scientific surveys, scanning rocks and taking measurements as if nothing had happened, the galaxy began to realize something important. The 7 small ships weren't lost explorers or desperate refugees. They were scouts. And if this was what Earth sent as scouts, what did they keep back home as a real military force? The quantum signatures appeared at the edge of the system, like flowers blooming in space. First one, then 10, then dozens of massive vessels dropping out of hyperspace in perfect formation. Captain Lee counted them through the viewport of the Seolyang. 267 ships, with more arriving every moment. "It's like a parade," Lieutenant Huan observed from his station. "Every major species is here." The Galactic Defense Armada had assembled in force. Zephyrian dreadnoughts hung like floating mountains, their crystal hulls refracting starlight into rainbow patterns. Klaxon swarm ships buzzed in tight formations, thousands of small fighters emerging from carrier motherships. The geometric vessels of the synthetic collective pulsed with artificial intelligence, while bioships from the Coral Republic rippled with living armor. "They've brought more firepower than most wars see," observed Captain Park from the Chongryong. Her sensors tracked the energy readings as shields powered up and weapon systems activated. "That's enough ships to level a star system." Commander Yun watched the alien formations take position from the bridge of the Baiko. "Remember the first rule of warfare," she said to her crew. "Never interrupt your enemy when they're making a mistake." The armada surrounded the 7 human ships in concentric rings. The formation was so massive, it could be seen from space stations light minutes away. News drones from galactic media networks hovered at safe distances, broadcasting the confrontation to billions of viewers across the galaxy. At the center of it all, the tiny human fleet continued their scientific surveys as if nothing had happened. Booming voice filled space, transmitted on all frequencies. It belonged to Admiral Gorath, the legendary Titan-class warrior who had never lost a battle. His species stood 12 feet tall and looked like armored bears with 4 eyes and tusks that could punch through steel. "Humans of Earth," the Admiral announced, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority, "you are surrounded by the combined forces of the Galactic Defense Armada. Your weapons technology poses a clear and present danger to galactic peace and security." Around him, on his flagship Eternal Victory, representatives from member species nodded agreement. The crystal beings chimed in harmonic tones. The gas dwellers rippled their approval. Even the ancient machine minds of the synthetic collective registered approval protocols. "By unanimous vote of the Emergency Council," Admiral Gorath continued, "you will surrender your vessels for complete technological inspection. Resistance will be considered an act of war against the entire galactic community." Captain Lee activated the tactical display, showing all 7 human ships in a small cluster at the center of the massive alien formation. She smiled as she looked at her fellow commanders on the shared quantum channel. "The whole galaxy's watching," Captain Min said from the Tiguk, his image flickering slightly due to subspace interference from all the alien ships. "Think we've waited long enough?" Captain Lee glanced around her bridge. Her crew looked calm, even excited. They'd trained for this moment for years. "What do you think, Min?" "Now's as good a time as any," Captain Min agreed. Captain Lee activated the General Fleet channel. "All ships prepare for revelation. Phase 4 is now active." What happened next defied everything the galaxy thought it knew about physics. Each Human ship began to change. It started with the hull plating. What had appeared to be solid metal began to shift and flow like liquid. Sections retracted, others extended. But it wasn't just mechanical transformation. Something far stranger was occurring. Space itself seemed to bend around each vessel. On the Seolyang, reality twisted. The ship's modest 200-meter length began to expand, but not in the normal way. Instead of growing outward, it seemed to unfold from within itself, occupying space that hadn't existed moments before. "Impossible," whispered a Klaxon observer. "They're violating conservation of mass." The Baeko revealed gun ports that couldn't have possibly fit inside its original dimensions. Weapon systems emerged that were larger than the entire ship had been. Sensor arrays unfolded like flowers blooming in time-lapse, reaching sizes that dwarfed most space stations. But the Seolyang was the most dramatic transformation. Captain Lee's ship didn't just grow, it exploded into its true form. Hull, sections that existed in folded space-time dimensions, snapped into normal reality. The small frigate revealed itself as a massive kilometer-and-a-half-long battleship that somehow had been compressed into a space smaller than a shuttle. Korean. Characters blazed to life along its hull, written in armor-height letters that could be read from dozens of kilometers away. Jiguye Suhoja, Earth's Guardian. The revealed ship was beautiful and terrifying, its hull curved like a great sword, covered in armor that seemed to shift between mirror-bright metal and deep space black. Weapon emplacements that could have housed small buildings tracked the alien fleets with mechanical precision. "By all the gods of space," Admiral Gorath's voice had lost its confident. Boom! The other human ships completed their transformations. The Teguk revealed itself as a carrier so large it could dock 20 cruisers in its hangars. The Maru became a missile ship with launchers that could fire projectiles the size of fighter craft. Each vessel was unique, specialized, and utterly impossible by known laws of physics. Captain Seo's voice came over the shared channel, amused despite the situation. "Shall we show them what Earth has learned?" The alien armada found itself looking at 7 vessels that collectively outmassed their entire 300-ship force. But it wasn't just size that shocked them, it was the technology. Those energy readings reported a synthetic collective analysis unit, power output beyond theoretical maximums. "They're shields," added a Zephyrian officer. "They're not energy barriers, they're folding space around themselves." Admiral Gorath tried to regain control of the situation. "This proves our point. You've hidden dangerous technology from the galactic community." Captain Lee's response was broadcast across every channel. "Admiral, we've hidden nothing. Earth applied to join the galactic community 200 years ago. We were told to grow up first, so we did." She paused, letting that sink in. "These scout vessels represent neither Earth's newest nor its most powerful technology. We simply equipped them with what we felt necessary for a peaceful survey mission." The implications hit the alien commanders like plasma torpedoes. If these were scout ships, expendable vessels sent ahead of the main force, what did Earth's real military look like? "How long?" Admiral Gorath asked quietly. "How long have you been able to do this?" "The folding technology. About a century," Captain Min replied casually. "Though we've made some improvements recently. 300 of the galaxy's best warships suddenly felt very, very small." Admiral Gorath's tactical display lit up with warnings as his sensors tried to make sense of what they were seeing. 7 human ships had just become 7 impossibly large warships, and now they weren't staying put like good little vessels under investigation. They were moving. "Sir, they're doing something," his sensor officer called out, panic creeping into his voice. The Seolyang disappeared, not the way it had before, vanishing entirely from existence. This time it simply stepped sideways through space, appearing 3,000 kilometers away in the blink of an eye. Then it moved again. And again. The massive human battleship was dancing through space like a fighter craft, teleporting between positions faster than the alien sensors could track. Each jump left a brief distortion in space-time, like footprints made of twisted starlight. Target. "Lock impossible," reported the Zephyrian gun captain. "They're moving too fast, our computers can't predict where they'll be." But the humans weren't just moving randomly. They were positioning themselves. 7 ships became 14 apparent targets as they moved so quickly that sensor ghosts appeared everywhere. The Galactic Armada found themselves surrounded by ships that weren't really there, trying to track enemies that existed in 7 places at once. "Open fire," Admiral Gorath roared. 300 ships unleashed their weapons at the same moment. The void lit up like a festival of destruction, plasma beams that could melt mountains, quantum torpedoes that could crack moons, energy blasts from a dozen different species and 100 different technologies. All of them missed. The human ships moved like they were alive, flowing through space with impossible grace. The Baiko slipped between 2 plasma beams with meters to spare. The Maru simply wasn't where the missiles thought it would be. The Taguk passed through a full salvo of laser fire like it was made of shadows. Then the humans fired back, but they didn't fire to destroy. Thin beams of silver light touched the alien vessels. Not the massive, destructive weapons everyone expected, but precise surgical strikes that found exactly what they were looking for. Each beam seemed to know exactly where to go, targeting specific systems with millimeter accuracy. The first Klaxon swarm ship went dark as its beam touched its main computer core. Not destroyed, simply switched off. Life support remained, gravity continued. Even the lights stayed on, but everything else died. "They're targeting our systems," someone shouted over the chaos. The Zephyrian dreadnought Crystal Shard found its engines failing as a silver beam touched its power coupling. The ship didn't explode or even lose pressure. It just stopped, drifting in space like a giant crystal sculpture. One by one, the alien vessels went silent. Not destroyed, not damaged, simply turned off like someone had flipped a switch. The beautiful light show of weapons fire began to fade as ships lost power to their guns. Captain Lee watched from the bridge of the Seoul-yang as her crew worked with practiced efficiency. "Tactical report," she called out. 243. "Vessels disabled," Lieutenant Huan reported. 67 still active but withdrawing to minimum engagement range. No casualties, human or alien. Time elapsed. 16 minutes, 38 seconds. The battle wasn't even 17 minutes old, and it was essentially over. 3/4 of the Galactic Defense Armada floated dead in space, their crews unharmed, but their ships completely helpless. The remaining active ships hung back at maximum distance, no longer firing. Their commanders had realized something important. The humans could have destroyed them all just as easily as they'd disabled them. The precision required to shut down specific systems without harming anything else was far more technically challenging than simple destruction. Captain Lee opened all communication channels. Her voice carried clearly through space, reaching not just the alien armada, but also the news drones recording everything. "People of the galaxy," she said in clear, measured tones, "Earth's children have come of age." On the flagship Eternal Victory, Admiral Gorath floated in zero gravity, his ship's artificial gravity another casualty of the human precision strikes. Around him, his bridge crew stared at screens showing their fleet's humbling defeat. "We've spent generations preparing for this day," Captain Lee continued. "Watching, learning, growing stronger." She paused, and across space communication systems began coming back online. The humans were restoring power to the alien fleet's comm systems, allowing them to hear what came next. "We don't wish to conquer or dominate," Captain Lee's voice was gentle but firm. "We understand the fears that drove you to assemble this armada. You saw our weapons and worried about what we might do with them." Admiral Gorath managed to activate his communication system. "Your power," he began, then stopped, searching for words. "Is something we earned," Captain Lee finished. 200 years ago, Earth asked to join the galactic community. You told us we weren't ready, weren't developed enough, weren't strong enough to stand among the great powers of the galaxy. The truth hit the assembled aliens like a tsunami. They had rejected humanity's first attempt at contact. They had dismissed Earth as insignificant, told them to grow up and maybe try again in a few centuries. "So we did exactly what you suggested," Captain Min added from the Teguk. "We grew up." The Galactic Council's emergency session convened within hours. Representatives from across the galaxy debated frantically while their military commanders tried to process what had happened. The humans had defeated the combined might of the galaxy's greatest powers, and they'd done it without spilling a single drop of blood. The vote was unanimous. The formal invitation arrived on Earth within days. Full membership in the Galactic Council. Senior status, with voting rights equal to any of the founding species. Territory recognition for all of Earth's colonies and exploration zones. Everything humanity had asked for 2 centuries ago, handed to them on a silver platter. As the human fleet began folding back into their compact forms for the journey home, their crews worked with quiet satisfaction. The long game had paid off. Earth had waited, prepared, and emerged victorious without becoming the very thing they'd sought to avoid. Conquerors. Captain Rowe opened a private channel as he watched his ship shrink back to its modest frigate. "Size, do you think they suspect there are 12 more fleets like ours out here?" he asked his fellow commanders. The question hung in space for a moment. Somewhere in the outer system, other small fleets waited patiently, having watched the entire confrontation play out. Some were next-generation vessels that made these scout ships look primitive. Others were specialized units designed for specific threats the galaxy hadn't even imagined yet. Captain Lee smiled as she looked out at the stars. Let them wonder. Mystery keeps relationships interesting. The alien armada began limping back to their home systems, their ships gradually restored to power by withdrawing human maintenance beams. They had stories to tell, reports to file, and a new reality to accept. Humanity had arrived. The end.